The apogee of the Eastern Roman Empire is often associated with one dynasty, the Macedonian one. All the splendors of Romania shown with the Macedonian Renaissance and the Great Roman Reconquests all took place in this period. However, the early years of the Macedonian dynasty were not as smooth as you might think, which is what we'll talk about today in Eastern Rome summarized. The dynasty's founder, Basileios I the Macedonian, became Basileios through scheming and bloodshed. He immediately took his friend Emperor Michael III's position once the latter was assassinated. Luckily, despite the army's discontent at this usurpation, no one revolted, thanks to Basileios' cunning. He also soon fired Patriarch Photios and reinstated Ignatius to work together with the new pope, Hadrian II, and tried allying with the Franks in 868 as the Arabs were a pain in Italy. This uneducated peasant was a natural political animal, exactly what the empire needed. However, the Frankish alliance failed. Emperor Louis II asked for Roman ships to take Bari, so Basileios sent Admiral Niketas Ooryphas, who recently drove off Arabs in Dalmatia and set up the Thema Makedonias. When he arrived in 869, he mocked the Franks and buttered Louis, causing a quarrel and the fleet to go home. Yet Basileios would soon have success in Italy, while that of Louis in Bari was short-lived anyway. In 870, Arabs conquered Malta, but Constantinople beat Rome for influence in Bulgaria, and Ignatius sent Boris autonomous bishops. Basileios had luckily found himself at the head of an empire with a drastically improved military situation, and he took advantage of it. In the east, the Paulician problem continued. Though Carpeas was killed by Petronas, the heretics gained a new dangerous leader, Chrysocheres, who raided Anatolia in 871 and even defeated the emperor, who had to be saved by an Armenian soldier, Theophylactus Lecapenos. This menace was ended by Basileios' son-in-law, Christophoros, who in 872 shadowed the Paulicians to Vathiriax Pass and annihilated them. Chrysocheres' head was sent to the delighted Basileios, who seized many cities in the Euphrates the following years, then celebrated a triumph. The naval front was also busy. The emir of Crete got a Roman trader, Photios, to raid the empire. He was fearsome, but no match for Niketas Ooryphas, who incinerated much of his fleet at Cardia and destroyed the rest at the Battle of the Gulf of Corinth in 873, during which Photios was killed and his fellow renegades tortured to death, though more will appear soon. Ooryphas also retook Otranto that year, Cyprus in 875, and Bari in 876. Evidently, the imperial fleet was extremely successful under Basileios, but not invincible. In 877, the Basileios used his ships to transport marble to build a church, causing Arabs to besiege Syracuse and take it in 878. Sicily was almost completely lost, but in the east, the Romans raised the Friki and permanently defeated the Paulicians. Then Basileios took his eldest son, Konstantinos, to campaign in the east, retook the strategic fortress of Lulon, and celebrated another triumph. Sadly, the next year, Konstantinos died, and Basileios was never the same again after the loss of his favorite child. He never liked his other sons, Leon, Stephanos, and Alexandros, especially not Leon, who some suspect of being Michael III's son. He would be known as Leon the Wise because he was educated by Photios, who got back into Basileios' graces by forging an elaborate genealogy for the monarch and was appointed head of the University of Constantinople and tutor for the princes. After Ignatius died in 877, Photios was again made patriarch. It might seem that Basileios' later reign was less successful, but Ooryphas' successor Admonassar was just as competent, scoring several crushing naval victories in the west in 880, opening the way for the reconquest of southern Italy by none other than Nikephoros Phokas the Elder, founder of the Phokas family. Unfortunately, Cyprus was reduced back to its condominium status in 882, the emir of Tarsus defeated the Romans in 883, and Basileios' relationship with Leon worsened. The teenage bookworm had a mistress, Zoe Zautsina, but was forced by his father to marry a pious woman. Déjà vu? Basileios even beat his son and placed him under house arrest. Leon probably resented his father and plotted his death, which occurred as a hunting accident in 886. Basileios was dragged by a deer for 16 miles, dying from hemorrhage. For 19 years, this murderous upstart ruled with much success, starting the most iconic East Roman dynasty. His repeated success in the east weakened the Arabs so much that Armenia regained independence. Like Justinian, he reignited Roman interest in Italy, built a lot, and reformed Roman law. Under him, the Procharon and the Epenagoge were compiled, basing off the Corpus Juris Civilis and the Eclogi, serving as important foundations for Leon's future magnum opus, the Basilica. As Basileios, one of Leon VI's first actions was to rebury Michael III with ceremony, and ungratefully fired Photios to make his 19-year-old brother Stephanos the Patriarch of Constantinople, since the latter was easier to control. In 888, the Arabs took the city of Epsili, yet as we will see, Leon's military fortune was very mixed. Phokas was recalled, but his success in Italy caused the Romans to capture Benevento in 891 and establish the Thema Makedonias. Meanwhile, Zoe's father, Stylianos Zaoutzis, gradually rose to be one of the most powerful men of the empire. He helped the learned emperor in completing the Basilica, an update of Justinian's laws that also served as the first law code of modern Greece published in 892. Stylianos eventually gained the title of Basileios, the highest dignity he could receive, as Leon's wife, Theovano, gave up their hopeless marriage and retired to a monastery in 893, leaving the Basileivs free to pursue his true love, Zoe. Despite his legal achievement, Stylianos provoked the worst enemy of the empire for the next 30 years to a disastrous war. The Bulgars gained a new Khan that year, Symeon, the son of Boris. Educated in Constantinople, young Symeon learned Roman conduct and jealously aspired to prove his superiority over Rome. His opportunity came when Bulgarian merchants complained about Stylianos giving monopoly of Bulgarian trade to his friends in 894. The Khan's appeal to Leon fell on deaf ears, so he gladly started a war. As most Romans were fighting in the east, Leon allied with the Magyars, who cooperated with Nikephoros Phokas to deal a heavy defeat on Symeon in 895. The crafty Khan then bought time to ally with the Pechenegs, who crushed the Magyars so soundly the latter migrated to the Pannonian Plain in 896. Symeon then invaded Thrace, and without Phokas around, Leon made peace with the Arabs to transfer his entire army to Europe, but the incompetent commander Leon Katkanon ended up losing so bad at Bulgarophigon almost the entire Roman army perished. The barbarians plundered at will until they reached Constantinople, demanding yearly tribute from the Romans and territorial concessions, which Leon was in no position to deny. Symeon gleefully backed off to deal with Serbia, while Leon probably created the Thema Romanos around this time due to the Bulgar threat. One could imagine Leon's displeasure at this disaster, but his personal life improved. In 897, Theophano passed away, so Leon married Zoe in 898. They were a happy, perfect match, but tragedy struck. Zoe died in 899 due to the devastation of Leon, with Stylianos following shortly afterwards. The Zaoutzis family worried about falling out of favor, so they plotted against Leon, but this was revealed to the Basileivs by the Arab eunuch Simonas. Leon punished the family and took Simonas as his new chief advisor in 900. Meanwhile, he was plagued by the fact that neither of his two wives bore him a son, which he needed to continue his dynasty. Third marriages were a sin according to the Eastern Church, but Leon needed an heir, so with a lot of convincing, Patriarch Antonius gave the emperor a dispensation, who held a bride show and married the beautiful Evdokia Vianney. The clergy frowned down upon this union, but Vianney gave Leon just the son he needed in 901. Yet, tragedy struck again. She died at childbirth, and the boy followed suit. Leon was again devastated, but still he persisted in his quest for an heir, so he took a new mistress, Zoe Carbonopsina, who he planned to marry only after she gave birth to a healthy son. Back to state affairs, in 902, Taormina fell to the Arabs, marking the end of Roman Sicily. However, their strengthened position in Italy and victories in the east make up for it. Leon's men intensely pressured Armenia and Cilicia and managed to sack Theodosiopolis. In 903, the Armenian prince Melias entered Roman service and settled in the fortress of Lecantos, which would later become the Thema Lecanto. The Arab navy became a threat again, as Roman traders Leon of Tripoli and Damianos of Tarsus led their raids. In 904, Leon of Tripoli tried to attack Constantinople, so the Basileivs made Zoe's uncle Himerios the admiral of the fleet, but the traitor retreated and sacked Thessaloniki, the second city of the empire, taking many prisoners and shocking the Roman world. In retaliation, General Andronikos Doux, founder of the Doukas family, raided Tarsus in Syria with Evstatios Argyros, founder of the Argyros family, and exchanged the prisoners he took for the captured Romans. Such a great general seemed destined for a bright future, but fate was cruel. When Simonas tried to defect to the Arabs, Konstantinos Doux, the valorous son of Andronikos, brought the eunuch to justice. Leon led his advisor off the hook, who vowed revenge on the Douci. Meanwhile, Zoe gave birth to a son in 905 called Konstantinos, and Leon was set on legitimizing them both. This task was difficult. His friend, the patriarch Nikolaos Mystikos, only agreed to baptize Konstantinos if Leon would cast Zoe aside. But then, in 906, Leon ignored the deal and married Zoe anyway, making her the empress. This fourth marriage horrified the clergy. Nikolaos was furious. He threatened to excommunicate Leon and refused to recognize Konstantinos' legitimacy. Leon needed to get rid of the patriarch somehow, since his heir's future was too important. An opportunity soon came, because Simonas had been exacting his revenge. He manipulated Andronikos into not showing up with reinforcements for Himerios when the admiral sacked Tripoli. When Andronikos realized that Himerios crushed Leon of Tripoli's Arabs at sea, then on land sacked Tarsus, he knew he screwed up, so he decided to revolt with his family. Leon knew Doux and Nikolaos were tight, so in 907 he deposed the patriarch on pretext of supporting Andronikos' revolt and made the spiritual father Ephthemios patriarch, who agreed to crown Konstantinos in 908 only if Leon did penance for his sins but refused to acknowledge Zoe as empress. After all this struggle, Leon finally got his legitimate heir, Konstantinos Porphyrionitos. Meanwhile, Andronikos' revolt failed and the duchy were saved by Arabs. His supporters, like Argyros and Melias, were temporarily disgraced but returned to favor soon as they were too valuable to lose, and technically so was Andronikos, so Leon decided to pardon him. However, devious Simonas showed the secret message to the Caliph, who imprisoned Andronikos in Baghdad. Konstantinos Doux, however, fled back to the empire in 908, where he was warmly welcomed but also warned to not have imperial ambitions by Leon. Then, Doux returned to fight on the frontier, where he was successful and incredibly popular, while Karma found Simonas, who fell victim to his own schemes. The Thema Makedonias was set up around this time as well. At sea, Himerios sacked Laodicea with no casualties in 910 and took Cyprus. Unfortunately, his fortunes were reversed as in 911, Damianos of Tarsus forced Cyprus back to its original status and Himerios failed to retake Crete. Returning from this fruitless campaign, the Roman fleet was ambushed by the Tripolite and the Tarsiad in 912, suffering a heavy defeat. Back home, Leon died from illness. His reign was a very mixed bag. He saw a lot of military disasters, but also quite a few splendid victories, and the start of what we call Byzantine encyclopedism. Many important works were written during this period, like the Tactica, the Book of the Eparch, and the Clerologion of Philotheos, which attests to the creation of the Thema Nikepoleos, Samu, and Mesopotamias during Leon's time. As Konstantinos was too young to rule, Leon's useless brother Alexandros was the next emperor, who reigned briefly and got rid of Leon's closest advisors like Patriarch Ephemios and Himerios, replacing them with Nikolaos Mystikos and Romanos, son of Theophylactos Lecapenos. In 913, he refused to pay tribute to Symeon, provoking a war before dying from his excessive lifestyle while playing polo. Konstantinos Porphyrionitos, a child, was left to deal with the deadliest enemy Rome has faced in a while. His regent, Patriarch Nikolaos, needed an experienced general to take over things in face of the Bulgar threat, so he invaded Konstantinos Doux to become emperor. But Doux and his supporters found themselves clashing with the Porphyrionitos' loyal subjects when they came to Constantinople. Doux died in a street fight while his supporters were punished, like Konstantinos Helatikos, who was paraded through the city on a donkey. The empire was deprived of a capable commander, so Nikolaos needed to make peace with Symeon somehow, who was at the city's door, and supposedly got what he wanted his entire life: recognition by the Patriarch as emperor or Tsar, like when the Pope crowned Charlemagne Imperator a century earlier. Nikolaos gained temporary peace but also promised to marry Konstantinos to Symeon's daughter, which was unacceptable to the people of Constantinople and Zoe, who managed to replace Nikolaos' regent in 914. She revoked Symeon's recognition and the marriage deal, hoping to answer the Bulgars with war. After her troops defeated Arabs in Armenia and Italy in 915 and retook Adrianople, the Romans prepared a grand expedition against Symeon that failed spectacularly. Zoe's supporter, Leon Phokas the Elder, son of Nikephoros, took command and she allied with the Pechenegs, who were to be ferried by Admiral Romanos. Zoe's plan was solid. The Romans would engage the Bulgars near Anchialus while Pechenegs would attack from the north, and was at first successful, but everything went terribly wrong. Lecapenos failed to transport the Pechenegs due to some petty argument, and when Leon's horse ran off, the Romans thought the general died and panicked. The Bulgars seized the chaos to almost annihilate the Roman army. Only a few survived, including Phokas, who rallied in defense of the capital but was again defeated, and Symeon freely penetrated deep into Roman territory. He was once again trying to conquer Constantinople, but Zoe incited the Serbs to revolt, forcing him to go west. This defeat utterly discredited her and Phokas, causing civil unrest while Symeon unleashed hell in the Balkans and made his empire the region's major power. However, that was the apex of Bulgarian power. In 919, after a coup, Romanos Lecapenos took over the capital, but vulnerable Konstantinos was not harmed, just compelled to marry Romanos' daughter Eleni Lecapeni. Zoe was deposed, Phokas was blinded, Romanos became Basileio Pater and eventually Roman Emperor himself in 920. This Armenian peasant would contain the Bulgar threat and become one of New Rome's greatest emperors. Symeon's ego suffered a huge blow as this marriage smashed his hope of becoming Basileio Pater, but all he could do was devastate the Balkans even more, defeat the Romans at Pegae in 921, but he couldn't take Constantinople as he lacked the navy. So in 922, he asked the Fatimid Caliphate for naval assistance, but Romanos got the Caliph to stay out of the conflict. So Bulgars continued pillaging Thrace until Symeon and Romanos negotiated outside Constantinople in 924, where Romanos supposedly lectured Symeon about Christian morality and offered to pay tribute to Bulgaria. Whether or not Symeon was recognized as emperor is unclear, but he never invaded the Roman Empire again. However, the next year, Symeon started styling himself as Emperor of the Bulgarians and Romans until his death in 927. Now, Bulgaria was weakened by a recent defeat to the Croats and ruled by Simeon's son Peter, who finally settled peace with the Romans. Romanos recognized Peter as emperor just of the Bulgars and let him marry his granddaughter Maria Lecapenos, while Peter yielded Simeon's conquests back to the Romans. Peace was finally secured, and after enduring the extremely harsh winter of 927, Romanos, who had shown himself to be a prudent and competent man, a gentle usurper who never ended the Macedonian dynasty but will bring it to new heights, would soon turn his full attention to the east. For some time now, his fellow Armenian general, Ioannes Kourkouas, had been making gains there. So the next time we will talk about the campaigns of Kourkouas and many other badasses. I hope you enjoyed the video, leave your questions and comments below, and thank you for watching.